you know, is there opportunity for anything to be modified? Because, you know, you say that you're coming or you want this meeting to get public input. Okay, you're getting it. So what are you going to do with it?
Say you had it.
So where are you now? In Scotland?
Exactly.
I have been to Scotland also.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Beautiful, a beautiful place.
Yeah, I agree. It was beautiful. And it was colder than I expected. I guess, you know, I'm going north from London, so to be expected.
Yeah, no, I love how green everything is. Of course, there was just a big thing in the Times today about how the Gulf Stream that keeps it warm there is getting all messed up.
Well, would that be a surprise?
Well, it's a terrible thing because the article said it could make it 15 degrees Celsius cooler in Europe, and that would not be a nice place to live then.
No, and all the palm trees in people's gardens in London will go away.
Well, there'll be frozen palm trees.
Jim, why do you not like the month of March in the calendar?
No, I like the month of March. I hate the picture.
I like the picture.
No, it's these disgusting shacks, shanties, whatever.
Well,
ew.
But Castle Village wasn't there then. What can we do?
There were other less more upbeat areas in your vicinity than that. I mean, it's interesting history, and of course it's in color, so that makes it interesting too. But and it's actually I'm staring at it. It's actually reasonably well composed, but I don't like the subject matter all that much. I mean, it's reality. I like your fireplace much better. Does it work? No.
It still has the gas knob, but I don't want to find out. I'm not trying.
No, don't mess with gas.
Hello, Tom.
No, there are gas pipes under my living room floor still.
Lucky you.
Hello.
So, Paola, do we know who is, actually, so we have the presenters who are going to talk about the 3960 Broadway, and we also have the gentleman who's going to represent Holyrood Church, correct?
Yes.
Va bene. I see two people with the same name and different faces.
Yeah, we use the same Zoom link. Apologies.
No.
Real Wahira though.
Okay.
And I'm Rohini Sumer.
How are you?
Represented. I'm fine, thank you. ARE and Redgate. My company name is RPO. How are you all?
We're good.
We're doing well.
Great.
Good.
So who don't we have? We don't have Steve Simon.
What else is new?
By the way, I'm also the Bronx and Upper Manhattan Borough Director for EDC. I don't know if many of you have heard, but Charlie has moved on. So I worked under him for some time, and now I'm just taking over the whole portfolio.
Yeah, he did mention that to me in an email.
Awesome.
I emailed him because we had asked for an update on the city commitments, or at least the sort of the planning zoning related ones related to the Inwood rezoning. And I think that probably goes back to 2019 or 2020. And it was kind of on hold while, you know, litigation went back and forth, but that was resolved. And we said, okay, let's, you know, I think each committee is focusing on its own areas of interest and responsibility. So I reached out to him about that. And, you know, he said, you know, fine, or that he would, you know, coordinate with other agencies, but also that he was leaving, so that someone else would be, you know, taking his place in that discussion.
Yeah, I just sent Ebenezer a note about that. So you'll see me on the agenda for next month's meetings.
Okay, so when you send Ebenezer notes, you should also copy me, because sometimes the information falls a little bit between the cracks and I get it late.
Got it. Can you give me your email address?
Sure. It is WB 1905 at earthlink.net.
Got it.
And I believe you already have it because you were copied on one of my emails to Charlie, and when I responded, I'm pretty certain I saw your name there.
Awesome. So it should populate.
Okay.
You guys are all set, recording and streaming live.
Okay, quick question. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
You all do. I've set it up from the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. Because I may need to share something. I don't know if everyone has it or not.
All your panelists have sharing screening abilities, your board members too.
Okay, so, but we're gonna have to stop them from sharing inappropriate material, so there.
We wouldn't do that.
Never. Okay, agenda for tonight's meeting.
Just tell me when you're officially starting, Wayne, so I know the time.
I will do that. I'm just kind of searching for something at the moment before I start.
No worries.
Oh, it's 9 minutes after.
That's right.
So we don't have Luis Barrio yet, do we?
The names that we see is all that we see so far. They're not on the call yet.
Okay. So, but you know, so he's with the Holyrood Church, but that's later in the agenda. So, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:09 p.m. I'm looking at Jim Berlin's chest and beard. I don't know why. Tanya, for the record, please note that, you know, Omar is excused for medical reasons this month and next month. And Chris Ventura has actually resigned from the board. So, you know, that's why, you know, with only four of us, actually 5 of us, you know, we have quorum. But, you know, so Steve will show up when Steve shows up.
Right.
And, you know, I think we all wish Omar, you know, well, surgery tomorrow. And he's supposed to have a speedy recovery, but still, you know, he's having surgery tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm actually sorry to see Chris Ventura go because, you know, given Chris's job, I mean, the last time we were talking about reaching out to some of the developers, he knew them all. And he has contact information. So even though he's not on the committee, we're still going to press him to get us that contact information. So my name is you know, Wayne Benjamin, and I chair land use for Community Board 12. And as we are beginning, I'd like to have my fellow committee members introduce themselves, and starting with Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya. Welcome, everybody. Looking forward to learning more.
And Tanya is the Assistant Chair of Land Use. Viv?
I'm Vivian Ducat. I'm the public member, and I'm looking forward to learning more as well.
Okay. Jim Berlin?
I'm Jim Berlin. I happen to be the board parliamentarian.
So,
welcome.
We have a number of items on the agenda, some of which involved presentations and some of which involved materials that were shared with the committee for review, so we could, you know, discuss them, and the extent to which there are any comments the committee wants to share, or perhaps share as a resolution or a letter, we can do that. And the first one relates to the Elisa Affordable Housing and Library Project in Inwood. The community board was asked to, host a meeting on the 18th of last month, at which HPD and the development team presented. So it was not a land use meeting. It was not a community board meeting per se, although, if time permitted, it would have been on the agenda for, February, but they were not ready to do that. So CB12 hosted and I moderated. And in the course of the presentation, there were a number of questions that came up, and this is a project that land use has discussed in the past, but probably not since 2019. So there were a number of questions that came up. I summarized from my perspective, some of the critical questions, of which there were about a dozen, and email that to the committee members for their reference, because we're not supposed to have a group discussion via email, but for tonight's committee meeting, we could do that. And I think it's important that we have some follow-up, because although at the end of that meeting, the HPD representative said that she would get back to the community board office, with some responses, because many of the questions were raised during that presentation. The last time I checked with Elisa and Ebenezer, they have not, followed up. So I think it's important for us to either have Elisa or Ebenezer send a letter that includes these and any others that we come up with, or in the form of a resolution, say that, we reviewed the plans, we hosted the presentation, we have these questions and are requesting, their follow-up. And I'm not going to read, all 12 of them, but I will say that a number of them pertain to the unit distribution, and the chair of our Housing and Human Services Committee attended the presentation and raised similar questions. There are 174 units, and there is a tremendous demand for affordable housing in general, but in particular affordable housing in all over Upper Manhattan. So 174 units of housing are appreciated. However, when you look at the breakdown, about 70% of the units are studios or one bedrooms. And so there was a lot of discussion of, how does that make sense given the demographics of the area? And, while granted, there are, renters and households that are looking for, one bedrooms, and given the funding program for this, which is ELA, I think 16% of the units have to be, set aside for formerly homeless. And, some of those are studios, some of those are ones, although if you look at the breakdown, you also have, some ones and threes in there. The question is, why so many, ones and studios, and can something be done to not dramatically reduce the unit count? Because as we all know, it's a numbers game, and the unit count helps make the project affordable in terms of development, but can it be modified somewhat? And the suggestion I had is that if you have two studios next to each other, you don't have to change the floor plan dramatically, but can you combine them into a larger apartment? Or if you have a studio next to a one bedroom or next to a two bedroom, can you combine it with that to make, a larger apartment? And maybe you don't do that on every floor. Maybe you do that on certain floors. But as I said, there are a number of questions that pertain to the layout. Also the affordability. I think one of the good things is for this project, the HPD and the development team, I think they heard what we said about affordability, because the ELA program caps out at 60% AMI. And when you look at the, the breakdown of AMI in Upper Manhattan, that's, a reasonable, target. However, once again, when you look at how the units are allocated, more than half of them are at the upper tier of affordability. And the question is, can we modify that so that, some of those units, I think 54% are at the 60% AMI, can we modify that so that, some of those units get pushed down to the 50, 40, 30% AMI. There was also a discussion of permanent affordability. And this is one of the projects that's using MIH, which is, one reason why the building is as tall as it is, although it's not taller than Dyckman houses, and people keep to forget that Dyckman houses is part of Inwood. But only, of the 174 units, you only have, I think, 40% that are permanently affordable based upon MIH. So the question is, what happens to the rest of the units? Now, the development team did point out, and the development team includes Community League of the Heights, which has been providing services to Washington Heights and Inwood for more than half a century, at this juncture, maybe 75 years. And they pointed out that, they are part of, the team, and, they are, committed to affordability. And so, there are other tools that are being used to maintain affordability for the rest of the project once the tax credit period expires. And they mentioned some of that, but I think it's useful for us if they reduce to writing what those tools are. I think they might have mentioned, regulatory agreements, other things like that. So it's important for us to know how they're going to maintain affordability for, the rest of the units. And then before the meeting began, Vivian and I were talking about the project's, architectural design, and particularly, the street facade. And when you look at the image, it's a very contemporary look, but at the same time, the architect is saying it is contextual. And in the presentation, there's actually a slide that shows two images of, neighborhood buildings that are Art Deco in style, and they're using that as building archetypes. And, what Vivian is saying and what I'm saying, and I'm an architect, Vivian isn't, but it's like we're both looking at it and saying, how is the context, how is the archetype that you're citing influencing the design of your facade? Because it's not evident. It appears to be a gray brick facade. It has a very vertical expression, and there's very little variation in the brick color. And just looking at the the building sided, while they do have a vertical expression between the windows, under the windows the brick is a different color, so it gives the facade a different pattern, and it's not as vertical. So the question is, you're citing these contextual elements in the neighborhood, but how are you actually using them? And what can you do to, I guess, more closely, relate to the context that you say you are relating to? So, I mean, those are the general, concepts. I also raised, an issue that when you look at the elevation, the library has a clear sense of identity of its own. And I know that years ago, the community was really concerned that the library would get lost in a mixed-use building. But, its entrance is set off to one side. It says, very, very visible, from the street. And, it kind of dominates, in terms of identity, whereas the residential entrance, the entrance to the pre-K space, and the entrance to the ACT space, which is kind of the community facility space, they're all one next to each other. And the question is, what can be done so that the residential component, because you do have 74 families or households that will be living there, that there's a sense that, their building entrance, the residential building entrance, has an identity as well. And it's not just one of three doors, one next to each other at the other end of the building. So those are, the questions that, I came away with from the presentation. I'm wondering, from the committee's perspective, are there other things that you would add to that?
Isn't the affordability different than they originally told us at the meeting? Wasn't it going to be 100% at a lower rate when they came to talk about the library and having to knock it down?
I think Ella was always I know Ella was always the funding source. So, no, it's the same.
Wayne?
Yes. You're going to say Ella Fitzgerald? No.
Yes. I guess my question is also, like, I think your summary of all this was great, right? Covered everything, really. I have a concern about the community center part of it, because I don't think it's adequate. I feel it's small from the pictures, from what they showed us, design. I don't know what kind of programming it seems like it's going to limit the type of programming. What I'm saying is, if we're going to get a chance to have a performance space or a community center as part of this rezoning, like, we need to do it. We need a real one, right? Because we don't know when we'll be able to have it again, get it again, right?
Yeah, I left any discussion of the pre-K and the ACT space alone, because I know that Liz Ritter they're coming to her committee to discuss the community space, and we suggested they also meet with youth and education to discuss the pre-K. So I was looking basically at the sort of design and planning aspect, more or less focus on the residential and the affordability, because it's part of the planning. It's like, what funding source are you using, et cetera, et cetera. But we can certainly note that, but also recommend that they follow up with the youth and education and parks and culture as discussed.
Yeah, it's just so inadequate. Like, the spacing, it doesn't seem like it was being built, with in mind in terms of what's possible there and what the needs would be.
Yeah, although I must tell you, I don't recall any prior discussions of there being a performance space. We always had the residential. We had, of course, the library. And we had some kind of I think the pre-K was there, and I don't know if we had a STEM or something like that, but I don't ever recall there being a performance space. So when folks started talking about that, I was surprised. And I could go back to the minutes from 2019, but I think there was a meeting room, but it wasn't like an auditorium space.
You know what I think that's coming from, Wayne? I think that's coming from when the discussions of the rezoning, like, there was this promise, or this from electeds, that there would be a space like that in the community as part of that. And I guess this is it.
Well, actually, no.
Okay.
Councilman Rodriguez is advocating for a standalone, sort of performing arts project. I think he even had a particular, site in mind, and I don't know where that is, but actually that's a good follow-up, for him before he leaves office. But I think one thing that we need to be mindful of, hello, Steve, we can see you chewing, is one thing is the cost of building it, but the other thing is the cost of operating it. And going back to my prior job, when the National Jazz Museum in Harlem was looking for to build a new home, they were actually very successful with the capital fundraise, but working with the empowerment zone, when they start to look at what it would cost them to operate their new, much larger facility, they have to take a second look at it, because, that part of it, I think, turned out to be more expensive than they considered. So it's the whole idea, I can give you the Taj Mahal, but can you maintain it? But I've added, the size of what's called the ACT space, and then also the size of the library, which we discussed, but I will leave it to between youth and education and parks and culture. The library, just to touch on it a bit, it's the same size as the existing, but you have a better net to gross, so there's less wasted space. So you get more usable space out of, out of the footprint.
So many fewer books, the usual.
No, that's not true. I mean, it's like you were talking about in that conference we had, Vivian, the old apartment layouts in 790, and then the ones that were redone sort of in the Depression era. A lot of the older apartments have like very long hallways, and that's what we mean by net to gross. It's like what's in circulation versus, you know, what's in the actual rooms. And, you know, if you look at the floor plan for the existing library, first of all, I think it's on more floors. Then you have more stairs and elevators and all that. So in the new layout, you have a much larger footprint to work with, and you get to lay it out in a more efficient way. Anything else on this?
I agree with Tanya that you did a very thorough job, Wayne. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll send you my bill.
You get paid what I get paid.
Exactly, and we're going to get a major increase. Hello, Rosie.
Hi.
And Steve Simon showed up too, I believe.
Right. So, Rosie, Steve, we were talking about the first item on the agenda, which was just the comments that I shared on the presentation that I moderated for the, you know, the Elisa affordable housing project. And were there any additional comments you had based on what I, you know, circulated? And you're both muted.
Give me 1 second. Let me
Steve, if you're talking, you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted, but I'm not talking. Oh yeah, I am talking, yes.
Yes, your lips were moving, but I couldn't hear anything.
I seem to recall that they mentioned a laundry room on the top floor, or there's a like public space, a garden area on the roof.
There is a roof garden, yes.
Didn't they say that there's a laundry room up there, or did
I don't know, but that's one of my questions. My question, you know, you see, it's like, is there a laundry room? Is there a community room? Because the typical floor plan that was included is just a typical floor plan. It simply shows, you know, the apartment layout. But if you have 174 units, I'm assuming you've got an internal laundry room somewhere. And I'm assuming that you also have some kind of a community room, but it wasn't discussed and it wasn't shown.
Well, they do show a schematic of the roof, but it's unclear what the community space up there, whether there's interior space.
I think I referenced interior space.
Yeah.
Because yesterday you would not want to be on the roof garden, right?
No.
Or even today.
And it was unclear to me how much space is being devoted to the what they call it, the axe space, and the what is the other one?
The pre-K.
The pre-K, yeah. Is that part of? Do you have that as part of your questions?
I added it, you know, based on Tanya's comments, but I also pointed out that I sort of left it alone because Liz Ritter has already invited them to come to her committee to specifically talk about the stuff that relates to Parks and Cultural Affairs. And I recommended that they go to Youth and Education to discuss the spaces.
Yeah, I know. And it struck me that many of the programs being offered in the ACT space are things that the library would also offer. So I'm wondering whether there's a relationship between the library and whichever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure will be discussed in more detail at those two meetings.
Yeah. All right.
And I think, frankly, if there is a relationship between the library and, you know, the pre-K and the ACT space, that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not bad at all. No.
And the question to the committee is this something that we are comfortable with, just want Eliezer or Ebenezer to send a letter to HPD, or do we want this to be more formal and have it be a resolution coming from the board where we're asking for responses to these questions?
I don't
I
think you
can
need a
comment
resolution.
on that.
You're just asking for factual material here. You're not taking a position one way or another. I don't see a need
No,
for a resolution.
I understand that the question is, you know, do we want it to be more or less formal?
Well, no, the thing is, if we want information from them, and that's all we want, then I would think it would be appropriate for the district manager to reach out for this information. But if we say anything at all or whatever, or imply anything, then it's the board, of course, that has to decide on what we want to say. But again, like I said, just to reiterate, if all we want is information, as Steve pointed out, I think we can certainly do that.
So based on how I phrased, you know, the 12 questions and the other two that have come up between Tanya and Steve, strikes me that we're just asking for clarification on the presentation made and how, you know, if they came to us saying that they want input, you know, we're giving that input, and the question is, what are they going to do with it? All right, so
and let me just say one other thing. I would not start out by saying, why did it take more than 1 year for HPD and the development team to provide us with an update on the project? Listen, almost every city capital project has been held up for the last year because of COVID, and to me that sounds a little petty. You know, they came to us, so.
Well, first of all, Steve, the order in which I typed them out at 9 o'clock at night is not necessarily the order that they will be, you know, although to be fair, the meeting, the presentation was done virtually, and we could have done, you know, and I think Gail Brewer has complimented, you know, CB12 for being, you know, one of the first, if not the first, you know, community boards in Manhattan to hop on, you know, having all of their meetings and doing their business virtually. So it's not clear to me that, you know, particularly given how advanced the project design is, that we could have had a presentation sometime last fall. And the other concern is, and I shared this with Eleazar, you know, when he asked me to moderate, you know, what's the purpose of HPD coming to the board? Are they really looking for public input, or do they simply want to say, oh, we had a meeting with the public because it's required, you know, based on some regulation, and it's kind of, you know, just for show. So we can certainly rephrase or even eliminate that particular, you know, point. But, you know, the last time we talked about the project was sometime in 2019, and just a heads up of where the project is, how it's progressing, could have been provided at some point in 2020.
Well, I tell you, I'm really not so sure with all the lawsuits and the court rulings and everything else. If I were HPD, I would have been wary of making any public presentation until the lawsuits were resolved. So
I hear your point, Steve. But once again, I think the lawsuits pertain to the Inwood rezoning. And, you know, this, although they threw it in there, this really, and that was even one of our points in our resolution, this really isn't part of the Inwood rezoning. It's a standalone project they threw in there to kind of say that we're already starting. But, you know, so let's not, you know, beat that point to death. I think the critical
except that I agree with Steve that I think because of all these extenuating circumstances, we can afford to appear charitable and not fuss about
let's
the
not
timing.
beat that point to death.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Let's focus
I misunderstood you. Thank you.
Let's focus on the questions about the affordability and the unit mix and design, because at the end of the day, that's what we're living with.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question. Is there any way that we can access like any kind of a presentation that they may have on this?
I emailed it to the entire committee, and Ebenezer then sent it to the entire board. So you should have it twice.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Not a problem.
So wait, so I'm looking at all the questions that are there, right. But the presentation is missing all of this information.
Well, the presentation generated those questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, after looking at it, it's like, okay, but how are you doing this and how are you doing? So, I mean, there was a lot of information there. For example, there is a chart that gives you, and I could try to find and resend the presentation to you. You know, there's a chart that gives you the breakdown of the number of units and the income levels and the rent levels. So there's a lot of information there. But when you look at, you know, how it's allocated among the various tiers, it's like, well, how come so much is here as opposed to there? How come you have, you know, this many units that are studios of ones as opposed to X? So it isn't one of the presentations where they didn't give you anything and therefore you had to ask, you know, lots of questions. They did give information, and based upon that, it's like, okay, can we talk a little bit more about why you're doing it this way as opposed to that?
But that's how they were when they came live before the whole COVID thing. It was sort of the same feeling.
And so, I mean, and yeah, and our questions are consistent, and that's, you know, I think, you know, and I think, Jim, you attended the presentation, but the folks who were there, you kind of heard me say on a couple of occasions that, you know, the land use committee discussed this, you know, with the development team, you know, a couple of years ago. We raised similar questions, and we were interested in how they took those questions and comments into consideration, you know, as they developed the project further. And I just resent the presentation to you, Rosie.
Wayne, I think I have one more question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This project is going to overlap with the construction of the office building next door. Can we ask them the extent to which they're coordinating with the developer of that project?
You know, we could ask. I'm assuming that, you know, there isn't. And when you say coordination, what do you mean?
Well, the staging area, the trucks that are coming in and out, I mean, the construction fencing. I mean, there are all sorts of, I think, items that have to be worked out with the people next door.
Well, but, you know, yeah, I guess the point is, how are they coordinating in terms of the construction schedule and phasing? But the sites are, you know, independent. And unless they were planning to use the adjacent site for staging, you know, there's no coordination that's required, you know, there per se. But I mean, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, what's the, you know, what are the schedules? Because if they're being built at the same time, and we don't know that they are, if they're going to be built at the same time, how is that going to be handled?
Well, they're saying that they're going to begin construction in the second quarter of this year,
right?
Which is April, May, and June. That project next door is, I'm sure, still going to be under construction at that point.
Has it even started?
I thought it had.
All we saw was an announcement about the project. We were going to reach out and have a discussion with them, but I don't even know if that project, you know, is anywhere near, you know, having DOB permits. So my point is, we can ask the question, but you know, and get the answer, but I wouldn't assume anything at this juncture.
Well, okay, but to me, it certainly would make sense with that when you have two active construction sites right next door to each other, that there should be some level of coordination.
Yeah, as I said, we can ask the question, but they're you know, they're not related in that, you know, you have two different owners, two different. I mean, right. if it turns out, which is not going to be the case, you have the same contractor, that would offer certain efficiencies, but we're getting ahead of ourselves on that. Okay, so if there is nothing further on the Elisa, I will reformat the questions and send them to, you know, Ebenezer copy our liaison and ask them to follow up with HPD and to make sure that the responses are provided to the committee.
And tell them to send this letter to the to Faye and to Liz so they know what we're doing.
Not a problem. So the next item on the agenda is, the review and comment on, and I think this is for the Public Design Commission, on proposed installation of a small HVAC system at 3960 Broadway. And I'm kind of interested why this is a land use matter. I think I know why, but we have our guest from, I believe, EDC to walk us through that. So who's taking the lead on this?
It's Wahira.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chair. So yes, this is an item on your agenda.
We can't see you.
Sorry. Okay. This is an item on your agenda because it is a part of the Public Design Commission process. So any design on any city land has to be approved by the PDC. And as a part of the PDC approval process, we do have to present the design to the board. It is not a yay or nay, so you're not necessarily voting on whether you like the design or not, but the letter that you provide acknowledging our presentation is an opportunity for you to include any feedback that you might have.
Right. Now, we've actually done this a couple of times. We've done it on like new construction.
Yeah.
And here we're commenting on adding an HVAC to the roof of a building.
Yeah. Yeah, it's required. I know.
It's required. Okay.
Yep. So I'm gonna pass it over to the tenant to speak to the work that they're doing. Sorry, Malia, were you gonna add something?
I was just gonna say that I work with Wahira at EDC and asset management. And so this property is a leasehold to Columbia University. EDC, on behalf of the city of New York, administers the lease for the Lasker campus in Washington Heights. And one of their subtenants, Alexandria, is the entity going through this PDC process. And so Rupi is our representative from their team to present the design.
Hi, thank you.
How are you?
So do we have the presentation, or is it part of your submission and you will take a look at it?
Well, we received the document, but do you want to share your screen or something?
You have to give me 1 minute. Do you have it handy there, Wahida?
Do I have it handy here with me? I have to check.
My team, hold on, please. Let me just bring it up. I'm sorry.
And what is your name? Because you're under Wahira, so I just want to make sure I got you.
I introduced myself a little bit early. My name is Rohini. I am a representative of ARE and Redgate, who is part of the project at 3960 Broadway. The requirement, it's a very small device that has been placed on the roof, but Department of Building requirements is that we pass through, we get the blessing from PDC for this.
And what's your last name?
Somair, S-O-M-A-I-R.
What is this?
I need to find the presentation. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no,
sorry. I sent it over to Ebenezer, so I think we thought.
I did forward the document to the board, to the committee. So everyone has the presentation.
When did you send it?
Steve, I can't keep track of what I send you things. I mean, I send it to the committee.
What was it today?
No, it wasn't today. It was a day or so ago, if not more.
If you give me 2 more minutes, I'll get it up on the screen.
Not a problem.
I don't do this normally, so little bit, if you say unprepared.
So let me see if I can do this. Let me try to.
I have it.
Share screen.
Do
you have it, Wahira? I have it too.
Okay. Okay, if you could share your screen, I will take control and get this. Seems like we all have it at the same time.
Okay.
Hello. So this is the building at 3960 Broadway, and
we know it well.
We are just installing a little HVAC behind the parapet over here. And you will see from my presentation that this device is so minor that you cannot see it from the street at any angle. So let's go to page number 2. This is a little bit of the area and the map that demonstrate the building. Followed by our little device here. As you could see, it's on the side here with this little device here. That is, we have a better picture in the second floor. Okay, here is it was a snowy day, so they took the picture. So this is the device right here in exhibit number, mechanical device on roof.
Right.
All right, it's behind this parapet. Do you see the sheet here? So it's not like you know, exposed to the roof or exposed to the public eyes or anybody.
Right. So
anything.
So what you're showing in the mechanical device on roof, that's existing. So you're adding something next to that, or you're
no,
that?
This is the device. They prop it up here.
Okay, so that's like a mock-up.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have attached here the cut sheet of this device. This is the size of it, very small. Followed by all the dimensions here on the other sides. And this here, this last sheet here is presenting the stand that it will be placed on the roof. And then the device will be placed on top of that. And a little cut sheet of all the materials that's going to be used.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I think this is what I shared with the committee, and when Ebenezer forwarded to me, I said, yes, we can add it to the land use committee agenda, but it wasn't clear to me, why it was a land use item. Although what I surmise is, because of the city involvement, it would trigger it. But basically, we already have HVAC equipment on the roof, and it's already, the design of the building, and this, I guess, is Max Bond's building, is shielding that, and we're adding now a very small heating and cooling device on the roof that you can't see. But we need to acknowledge that it was presented to us, and do we have any comments?
Yeah, I think this is a resolution with maybe 3 whereases and a resolved, and we can easily say that this is not controversial and there's no issue involved with this, and we should just, I think, pass on it.
And nobody can see it.
Well, that's the important thing. No one can see it. Maybe if you're in the children's hospital across the street on a higher floor, maybe you can see it.
Yeah, but you can't see it from the street. No, you can't. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe somebody in Tanya's building on a higher floor can see it. But I'm sure if there's already an HVAC unit up there, this would hardly be intrusive. So, Jim, did you make that motion? No, I think I did.
I second his motion.
So in terms of the other questions or comments from the committee? Hearing.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't, again, I'm learning. So forgive me if I ask stupid questions at the beginning, but are there any other, I mean, is this unit loud, or is there any other concerns about anything about that unit, even though it's tiny? Are there any other, things that we should be aware of about its functionality? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good question. So what is being done to muffle the noise that might result?
Well, I guess the first question is what Tanya asked, what is the noise that would result?
Okay.
Right. It may not require muffling. Exactly.
Okay.
Because you'll have buses going by and traffic, so that'll muffle it.
Well,
if we could just kind of focus on the question.
Not necessarily 24 hours a day.
Right, but once again, you have existing HVAC equipment on the roof. So the question for HPD and or the tenant is, to what extent is this added piece of equipment? How does it impact sort of the ambient level of noise or vibration that's currently there? Hello, someone, anyone?
I don't, if I could go, this is all the way on the 6th floor of a building. If you're talking about the noise that you could hear from the street, there will be no noise. And again, there are several other devices up there. This is just very small, like your AC unit, for example, of your windows. So, and again, the traffic and all of that will make this not even hear from the street. Or
well, we've been by that building, many times, and in fact, the community board office is across the street. When we can actually get to it. Are you able? Has anyone heard the HVAC equipment from street level ever?
No, this is not the building across from the community. Oh, it is. Yes, it is. It is.
You've got Obon Pen on the ground floor. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But could I ask? Is the unit positioned closer to 165th Street or 166?
I think it's towards Broadway. It's closer to.
Okay, that doesn't answer my question. Is it?
So it's in an angle. Rahita, can you put back that drawing for me, please?
Right, it shows the roof plan.
Exactly.
I think it's closer to the southern, so that would be
165th.
165th. It's where that curve occurs.
Okay, well.
Can you pull up the screen again? Right there.
Right.
Yeah, so it's where where that curve is occurring. So that's actually 166, is it not?
I don't know. Can you put the cursor where it's going to be?
It's where that little black dot is. I mean, Steve.
Right here.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's 166. All right. So Tanya, this is away from your building.
Yeah. See that.
But I think it's also interesting to look at it in the context of what is there.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, it's facing the park, not the residential on the other side. So I again, I don't, I find it hard to imagine it'll be an issue.
And any further discussion from the committee?
No.
Okay, thank you. You can stop sharing the screen. So we have a motion from Steve, second by Jim, basically. It's, you know, can't be seen from the street. It's non-controversial. There's no issue with the placing of that unit on the roof, given the existing use of the roof. So
I would say there are no anticipated negative environmental impacts.
So those committee members in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. People got moving around. Opposed? Abstaining? 1, 2, 3. How many committee members do we have? I don't know what's happening, but my screen keeps jumping. It's like someone's coming on and off of it. So there are 5 of us. Are there any members of the public who would like to vote? And if so, I guess you can just do so by raising your hand on the screen. Is that 4? Any against or abstaining? Okay, thank you.
Wayne, before we leave this topic.
Yes.
Do we have somebody from EDC here who's in charge of monitoring the laboratory work or the use of the building, or how it's being managed by Columbia?
Well, we have someone from EDC. I don't know if that's her responsibility, but we can certainly ask.
Right. So my role in EDC asset management is I'm the lease administrator for Columbia University's ground lease. So their premise includes the Mary Lasker building, the Alianza building, and the parking lot closer to the Chase Bank and Audubon Ballroom side of the block. We have a ground lease with Columbia, which is a relationship in which we're pretty hands off. The lease outlines that Columbia maintain their premise in accordance with the use described in the lease, which is biotechnical and medical research in classrooms. So EDC wouldn't oversee directly a construction project this small. It's something.
No. That's not what I mean. I don't want to take up the committee's time, but I'm the chair of the Health and Environment Committee, and what I'm anxious to have is a overview of what has been accomplished with this project over the last 25 to 30 years since the building opened up. What has it fulfilled the original goal that we set back in the early 90s when we entered into this arrangement with Columbia? Have we had some biotech advances? So
that's a good topic to invite
my committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Malia, can I give you a call so we can discuss that?
Yeah. Well, Hira, I would love for her to join as well.
Yeah, I think we definitely need Columbia to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, I think they're not on the call
line about how we can coordinate.
Yeah. And one thing I would appreciate from you, like if you have specific goals in your mind that you're tracking that you want updates on, that's helpful context for us as well.
No, I'm looking for some general stuff, really.
Okay.
I think years ago someone mentioned that there is an artificial skin that's used for for burn patients that was developed there. So it's things like that. What was done and what came out of the research and development at that facility since it was, first put online.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, let's
that's
have a offline conversation.
So how do I contact you?
If I can drop my email in the chat. If not,
Okay.
I will email it to the chair and he can share it with all of you.
Yeah, well, I have your email.
You have it, right? Okay, great.
And I could forward it to Steve.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So the next item on the agenda tonight, do we have let me check the participants, the representative from Holy Rood Church. I think that was Luis Barrio. I don't see him.
So sorry, Chair. Did you need us to remain on the call or?
No, we thank you for your participation. We're good. I mean, you are more than welcome to stay. Something tells me that you're not going to.
I'm starving, so.
Yes, I already ate, so I know the schedule.
Awesome, thank you all, I appreciate it. And I'll see you next month.
Very good.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you. So,
she's going to see us next month.
Yes, that's what she said. So what's fortunate is last month we discussed or maybe the month before actually, we discussed the LPC's intention to designate Holy Rood Episcopal Church. And we invited a representative to attend because we wanted to get a sense of, the outreach. And we do have confirmation from a representative, but he's not online yet. However, when I say it's fortunate, we received maybe 2 hours ago from LPC that they are holding the public hearing for Holy Rood Church on the 23rd of this month. And they're holding it at 9. Hello?
Wayne, there's a attendee by the name of Pedro Valerio that has his hand up. So maybe you want to find out what he wants to say in case he is with Holy Rood. I wouldn't know.
Okay, well.
It's on your attendees list.
So can you?
Someone has a raised hand.
Yeah, so can you unmute him or something, or do I have to do that?
He can speak.
Okay, Mr. Valerio?
He's muted.
You have to unmute yourself.
All righty, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Well, I was told to attend this meeting and I'm trying to understand what is it that I'm supposed to provide you with.
So are you representing the church?
Yes.
Okay, well, no, we actually have the presentation material, so to speak, from LPC. What we wanted to get a sense of, we know that in the last few months, the church was added to the National Register of Historic Places, which is wonderful. And on January 19th, the Landmarks Preservation calendared it for consideration. And we found out literally like 2 hours ago that the public hearing to accept comments on that will be on the 23rd of this month. But we wanted to get a sense of, in the course of, the State Historic Preservation Office, putting the church on the National Register, and now in the context of LPC considering it for landmark designation, how have they reached out to the church? What information have they shared? What has the conversation been like? So that's basically what we wanted to hear from you.
Okay. Well, basically, this is a Holy Rood Church. The facade of the building that it is an 1893 built.
Mm-hmm.
That is a country style church with a tower designed by R.D. Chandler. The church was involved in the dedication of Fort Washington Memorial Plaque, which is located in Fort Washington, site of Bennett Park. That's basically been it. There might be other people online that might be able to give more details.
Yeah, I was only given the name of one person, and he's a. I guess from our perspective, you have to understand that the community board and the land use committee, we are very, supportive of historic, designation, in Upper Manhattan, and we and other uptown community boards often complain that uptown gets ignored. So we're very, happy that the church is being considered. We just want to make sure that the church, the congregation, the representatives were spoken to, and your questions, were answered. Because people often have questions about what it means to be designated. Can I do this? Can I do that? Well, there was one church that said if they got designated as a church, they could no longer use it for religious services, which is absolutely not true. So we just wanted to make sure that there's been outreach to the church and get a sense of what your comfort level is.
Okay. I think for me, I know it's a great thing to have that kind of designation. It means people will be able to appreciate historical beauty in terms of what the building has to offer from the inside and the outside. It's still going to be used for religious purpose, and we'll be happy to have people come by and appreciate history.
And I know, and Liz is with us, but Steve can probably, chime in. I think, there are a number of, programs over the years that have occurred at Holyrood that, the various community board committees have, brought to the attention of the board and the community as a whole, because it seems like there's always something interesting and exciting, happening there.
Yeah, well, I think we need to take note in our resolution that it's not just a beautiful building, which is an asset to the community, but it's a continuing resource to the community, that it serves a multitude of purposes, that it's opened its doors to various community organizations, and currently houses a program run by the Dominican Women's Development Center. It's an extremely important building to the community in a variety of ways.
And it's also very beautiful. And I've been inside also, which won't be landmarked because it's sanctuary, but it's very beautiful inside as well.
Yes.
Yeah. That was what I was getting at. It's a beautiful building, but it's also an important part of the community.
Weren't they giving a safe haven to somebody last year?
Yes.
Who was going after?
Yes.
It is a sanctuary church also.
If it's in order, I would move that the community board support the landmark designation of the Holyrood Episcopal Church.
I second the motion.
Excuse me, Tanya, I made you a co-host because I can't be watching the stacks. I'm not a land use member. There's another person with a raised hand, and you too, Wayne, you also co-host. Maybe you want to change your tab to attendees so you could see who has questions while you guys are presenting.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm kind of going back and forth. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. I see.
There's somebody named Louisa.
Yeah. So I was going to say that. So Louisa, are you able to unmute yourself? You're not actually driving, are you? You're not. You have to unmute yourself, Louisa. I can see you, but I can't hear. Or I can see your picture, but I can't hear you. Louisa? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good.
My name is Luisa Terrero. I'm a member of the vestry from Holyrood Church, elected last year, 2020. I'm also the vestry clerk, and I was just gonna follow what Mr. Pedro Valerio was saying about the history of the church. I believe that Mr. Stephen Simons was saying that the church has a lot of, I'm sorry, the church has a lot of movement in the community. And yes, the church is well known as the people church due to its involvement with the community. And it attracts a lot of diverse number of social, political, and cultural groups, which basically use the church space for meetings and events. Currently, we have ministries that impact the church needs. And if you know, I can more or less give you a little bit of more information about those ministries.
Sure.
If you may ask.
Yeah, please tell us.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So we do have, I think we have a couple of vestry members here tonight, and I believe they can also speak a little bit more about the different ministry that we have. But the most important ministry right now are the food ministry, which right now is working in distributing food to almost 800 community members. Then we have a deaf community.
Is that 800 per day, per week?
800 per week, yes. We distribute food 5 days a week. Food that is donated by a different organization and ready to eat fresh meal. That we serve on Fridays and actually on Wednesdays and Fridays. We also have a deaf ministry. The church offer Sunday service to both English and American Sign Language to an increased community of the deaf. We also have a ministry of Washington Heights Choir, which offer a free after school program to children ranging from kindergarten to 5th grades. And other ministry, I believe the latest ministry, which is Peace and Justice Ministry, and I believe Mr. Pedro Valerio can speak to you about it. Pedro, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you?
You're talking about the ministry de los pueblos.
Yes.
Oh well, that's the ministry that's engaged in providing foreign assistance to any country outside of the U.S. that's in need of any help. Like, for example, we just had a big one for Honduras due to the hurricane catastrophe, where items were collected to help those. So basically, any country that is, you know, that the ministry is involved in just sort of like staying in touch with the, you know, with international countries and providing help where there's needed, and that be it through materials or even monetary. And we try to make sure that it gets to the people that really needs the help. There's also again, like you said, it's a very open and progressive and integrational church, where if there's something that we don't have and you think you have an idea and you can bring it forward, you know, you're more than welcome. It actually, though the majority of the population that comes to the church and helps is Latino, there are other members that we get through other ministry, whether it is through Life and Abundancy, which is a ministry that's dedicated to enriching you and sort of like discussing biblical stuff from a perspective of a day-to-day living. Mm-hmm. And there's also a sanctuary ministry, which is really, sanctuary, which is to help and protect those who are here illegally, and making sure that, that these are people who have certain needs, and they're just human beings.
Let me add to that we have in that sanctuary, we have a family of 5 right now that were at risk for deportation, and they still living in the church. So we are a safe haven to those that has been persecuted by ICE.
Yes, I think one of the points made in the materials concerning the designation, on one hand, it's an easy designation from LPC's perspective because it's an attractive Gothic revival style building that its inside and its outside are very much intact, and LPC can deal with the architectural part of that quite easily, and we've talked about that. Where they often fall down is sort of the history and culture of things. But at least with this church, they're also talking about its connection to the community and how it has seen, Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and it's really connected to the community. And they're citing that as well in the materials when they're talking about its importance. So they're moving a bit in the right direction.
Yes, yes.
What would make it a strong direction?
Wayne, the president of the church board is also on the call, is also Yaniris Urbeyes.
Yeah, I see that person.
And one of the wardens.
Yeah, and if Yaniris would like to speak, I think you just have to unmute yourself and, we're here.
So, hi, good evening.
How are you? You look familiar.
Yes, I'm very familiar. My face is everywhere in Washington Heights for many, many, many years, so the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for the invite. We just heard about this meeting, I think it was yesterday, so we didn't have too much time to prepare.
Well, let me apologize for that, because we asked our office staff a month ago to reach out to the church, a month ago.
Okay, so we just find out through Sandra Harris, who called me and let me know about the meeting. Mm-hmm. We were not aware that we were in the agenda, but thank you anyway.
Yeah, you were in fact our first guest for this meeting, because we wanted to make sure that Landmarks was speaking to the church.
Yes, but Luisa and Pedro have more or less indicated who we are as a church that most people in the community call the People's Church, because it's not only a place for mass and religious services. It's also a meeting place. It's also a meeting place for so many groups in the community: political, cultural, religious, you name it. It's a diverse, there's a meeting taking place at the church every day. Sometimes several meetings on the same day. As you say, this is a beautiful church built in the Gothic style. This is a church that we want to preserve as an important meeting place in the community. And I really, really, really appreciate your interest, the interest that you have taken in the church and the things that take place there. And we invite you to come over, maybe for a meal sometime. This is a church we always eating at the church. There's so many meetings, so there's always food. Sometimes homemade food at the church. There's always food at the church. So you're welcome to come and visit us. And I believe Pedro and Luisa already say most of what takes place at the church, and it is important. Not only the architectural structure, but the importance of the church, what the church means for the community. One thing that we feel very proud at Holy Rood is our music ministry. This is a group of local professional musicians who have found a place at Holy Rood for practice and also for performing free concerts from classic to popular music. And that's something that we feel very proud of. And so we have other programs for the elderly, so you name it, the People's Church.
And is it still used as a polling place?
Yes, it's a voting place also. It's on elections days, yes. It's voting place. Yes, and also every Monday, since we started with the pandemic, it's a testing place. Every Monday we have people from the community who come and get tested for COVID-19. And we are in the process of getting permission to conduct also vaccinations at the site.
Very good.
Yes.
And I believe in either 2019 or 2018, the closing ceremony for the Uptown Art Stroll was held outside of Holy Rood, and then the reception was in the lobby area.
What was the question again?
The Uptown Art Stroll, the closing ceremony, I think in either 2019 or 2018, there was sort of music in the outside area, and then the food was right inside the church.
Yes.
I was there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you have an idea, more or less what we do. And our concerts are legendary. There's also a community group that you probably are familiar with, which is the Washington Heights Chorale, and they offer twice a year beautiful concerts.
Yes, our chair of Parks and Cultural Affairs, Liz Ritter, speaks about that group many, many times.
Yeah, well, she used to be a member.
Yeah, I believe she used to be a member.
Ah, okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so
is there anyone?
You have other questions?
No, I was gonna say, is there anyone else from the church who would like to speak?
I just wanted to add also, this is Pedro. I just wanted to add that we also have an Alcoholic Anonymous meeting that happens also, both in English and Spanish.
Oh, and also, there's a celebration of Mass every Sunday at 10 o'clock. The older congregation, people who have been members of the church for more than 60 years, attend the services. And that congregation is comprised by original African Americans and European immigrants who found a place at Holyrood. So that congregation is still active, is still there. So it's not just the Latino congregation, but also the English speaking congregation is very active at the church.
That's wonderful.
How many people are in that group that have been around for 60 years?
Wow. There's about 30, more or less 30 people.
Wow.
Wow. A lot of them are very old.
Wow.
But they still contribute. They are still part, pretty much part. That's
each one of them is eligible for landmark designation.
Yes. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our 125th anniversary.
Wow.
And we honored 40 of those members who were still around.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It was a beautiful ceremony to see all those people who have been members of the church for sometimes 60 years.
That's incredible. I think, Mr. Valerio, I just want to point out to you, we were given a history of the church. The parish was founded in 1893, but the first church was actually located at Broadway and 181st Street.
That's correct.
I would love to know whether it's where the McDonald's is now. But this particular building was built in 1911 to 1916. Took 5 years to build it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's around the same time that my apartment building was built.
And Church of the Intercession.
Yep.
Yes. The original church was where part of McDonald and the Apple Bank.
Really, it was on that corner.
Yes, in that corner. We have pictures of the original church.
Wow.
Yes.
Great. This is wonderful. So we do have a motion on the floor to support the LPC designation of Holyrood Church. It was moved by Steve Simon and it was seconded by Jim Berlin. So is there any further discussion from the committee? If not, those committee members in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Jim, I can't see you. Rosie, I can't see or hear you. Jim, Rosie? Hi, Jim Berlin, Rosie Perez?
Yes.
We're voting on the resolution?
Yes. Aye.
Okay. Jim?
I was on a call with another board member on this crazy parliamentary problem.
Okay.
So remind me of the resolution and I will be happy to vote.
It's the supporting the LPC designation of Holy Rood Church.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so after the committee votes, members of the public who wish to vote can also do so. So, and you can do so by just clicking, you know, on your screen to raise your hand. So those members of the public who will vote in favor. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. Okay. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. And do we have any other, let me check, other board members who are not committee members present? Like Mariela de la Cruz? Do you want to vote?
I usually don't vote, but thank you.
No, at a committee member, as a meeting, you can vote, but I mean, we vote first the committee, and then we vote other board members. So other board members simply vote separately.
Oh, no, I'm not allowed anyway, so I don't. But thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
No, so are you on our committee, or I mean on the board, or are you representing?
No, I represent the comptroller.
Okay, yeah, we've got a number of people who've been like bouncing around, and it gets me like, you know, Natalie used to be on the board and now she's with the borough president. So I always have to go through, you know, what seat are they sitting in now?
Oh, I wish I were that lucky, but I'm not.
Yeah, okay.
It's all about the hats. That's my conversation with this other person. Depending on what hat they were wearing, they could either talk at some meeting or not.
Right. Okay, so that's wonderful. Thank you, everyone from from Holy Rood Church, and we look forward to being with you again when we're able to meet in public safely.
Thank you. You're more than welcome.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for having us.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
And as you can imagine, you know, we know you, so you're not strangers to us at all.
Thank you, Wayne.
That's good to know.
Take care. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is, it relates to the proposed new school, 860 seat primary and intermediate school, at 10th Avenue between 201st and 202nd Streets. Now, the formal public hearing / presentation is being made next Monday at the Youth and Education Committee, which sort of makes sense. Initially, Faye in particular wanted them to also come to land use, but they were not able to make it tonight. And I actually do not see what there is for land use to comment on per se. I circulated once again to the committee the letter that was sent to Ebenezer from the School Construction Authority. So, under the School Construction Authority Act, when they are proposing a school for a site, they have to give, notice, and then within 30 days of notice, there's supposed to be a public hearing. And then within 45 days of notice, we have to provide, comments on the site plan because the school isn't even, designed yet. So as I guess Vivian and Jim know, and Steve for that matter, and for Tanya and Rosie, we've talked about, what's permitted as of right in certain zoning districts over and over again for the last years. But in R72 and R8, which are the zoning districts that we have up here for the most part, schools are considered community facility buildings, and they're permitted as of right. So there isn't any discretionary approval that's needed. We recall several months ago, there was a charter school that needed a special permit, but that's because it was in a zoning district, a C8, which we have a few of, but they're not that big. And in C8s, nothing is permitted except for like automobile and garage users. So this, you know, we don't have that. And additionally, as I recall, the school construction authority is not subject to zoning, or it has the ability to override it. So they're not coming to us for any you know, land use related issues. But looking, you know, looking at the material and looking at the, you know, the site plan, and Faye and I had a half an hour conversation, you know, yesterday, and I guess there are a number of things that, you know, she and, you know, representatives from the schools want to talk about with the Department of Education and with the school district. I just jotted, you know, a few things that I will share with her as comments, but I wanted to first share it with the committee to see if, you know, if there are other, you know, land use or planning type questions you might want to pose. I told her I would try to, or that I would attend the, you know, the Youth and Education Committee. If other land use members can attend, that's, you know, next Monday at 7. I'm sure she would appreciate. But in simple terms, and this is not something that's in the materials provided, and which is unfortunate. The two schools currently are located in leased space. So what this new school would do is allow, and that lease is coming to expiration. So what it would allow is the city to stop paying rent where it currently is and to build a new building. And it's actually Natalie who shared that information, you know, with us earlier today, because, you know, one of the questions is, okay, what have you done to, for example, try to renegotiate and extend the lease? And, you know, and, or wasn't that, is like, why are they moving? And she pointed out they're in lease space. And actually for some odd reason, since they're in lease space, they are not eligible for, or their eligibility for capital funds is limited. And she's going to look into that more, because typically, if you have a long-term lease, you are eligible for capital funds. But in any case, you know, they're in lease space, and they'll be moving to a new purpose-built school. So one of my questions is, you know, what's the acquisition cost of the site? You know, is this a negotiated sale, or is it eminent domain? Can you say some more about the cost savings over renewing the lease? Will the new school building offer, you know, more or less space to each of the schools than they currently have? Will the new school building offer, you know, added and expanded, you know, amenity and shared spaces? You know, what's the proximity of bus stops and subway lines? How does the new location impact, you know, students and parents' ability to, you know, walk to school? And I guess the question is, how many currently do that right now? They're acquiring existing buildings. So, you know, what are the businesses that are being displaced and what's happening with them? You know, are the adjacent buildings on the block, are they compatible, you know, with school use? That's a decent planning question. And, you know, will there be outdoor, you know, recreation space? So, I mean, although there are no, you know, zoning issues per se, I guess just from a, you know, broad planning perspective, those are the things that came to mind in looking at, as I said, in commenting on the site, those are the things that came to mind. And I sent early today, I went to Google Maps and pulled up a picture of the site, and it's right across from Dykeman houses. I thought it was right next to the track, but it's not, which is good. It's on the other side on 10th Avenue. So I sent that picture to the committee. Your thoughts, your additional or other thoughts on this project or this site acquisition?
Well, I would ask if they're using eminent domain, I would ask, why don't they use it for the current site? I mean,
well, that wouldn't really help, because you're in the current site. So if you took it, you'd still have to move them somewhere else to build a school.
You have existing school buildings. Why can't you just
is it an existing school building, or is it just an existing building that's being used by a school?
Well, the city has already invested quite a bit of money to rehab these buildings to make them usable as schools. They've been PS 18 has been there for I don't know, 30 or more years. The other building has been there for
well, that sort of goes to my question: what are the cost savings over, renewing the lease. So the question is.
But let me finish my thought. This particular site is just 1 block away from PS5.
Right.
So, and I would think that the current location perhaps is more suitable in terms of serving people up in the northernmost part of Inwood. So I really would like to hear more about why they absolutely have to move. And I don't quite understand it. Why they've been in both buildings for quite a extended period of time. Why suddenly do they have to move? And if necessary, why can't they utilize eminent domain to keep the current sites?
Yes, I can add that question.
And then they gave us a list of other sites that they looked at.
Yeah, I believe that's required.
So, but one of them, 4650 Broadway, they indicate would have apparently sufficient, determine this site can accommodate both a new primary and intermediate school with a capacity for 860 seats, which is what they're looking for. So there's no indication here as to why they rejected that site. And then 407 West 207th Street, which I assume is the supermarket site south of the bridge. They're saying that it's not big enough for a school with 860 seats. I would think that's a pretty damn large site.
There's another thing about the current site, or the site they're proposing. Although it has the Dyckman houses on one side of the street, right on the other side of the site, to the east of it, is a Con Ed switching yard.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing inherently dangerous about a Con Ed switching yard, and maybe kids looking out the window will find this fascinating and all become, little physics students like I did. But, that exposure of the building again, is a little bit odd.
Yeah, well, that goes to my question of the compatibility of adjacent buildings to the school.
Ah, very good, very good.
And sort of catty corner to the south is another Con Ed station.
Yeah, I think that all falls under the category of the compatibility of adjacent buildings to the school use. Vivian, are you raising your hand?
I was saying, I mean, that part of 10th Avenue doesn't seem very friendly if you think of going to school there. I mean, maybe it'll all change anyway with the rezoning, but it just seems kind of, I find it very depressing there, put it that way. And I would find going to school on Broadway, it's just much more open and bright and kind of welcoming.
So I guess the question is, what makes 10th Avenue depressing? I mean, is the Dyckman House side of 10th Avenue depressing, or the other side of the street?
No. It's the proximity to the raised train. It's kind of the bars. It's sort of.
But they're a block away from the raised train.
Yeah, the raised train is on the other side of the Dyckman houses. It's nowhere near there. But the area it's in, and I tend to agree with Vivian, it's sort of, industrial-ish, commercial-ish. It's not it's not a welcoming.
Is the area attractive for a school?
Right. I mean, again.
And the uses of buildings currently, the sort of feel of it.
Right. I mean, it's not like it's a terrible place, but
there is a school.
You imagine a school like in a residential area, and obviously the other side of the street where the Dyckman houses are, that's as residential as it gets. But its side of the street, that's a whole other world almost.
Wayne, David Thom has his hand up from the poet.
I just lost you.
Me? Oh.
No, I was getting to. So, Dave, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. So my name is Dave Tom. Many of you know me, and you know I live in northern Inwood. And my sons have actually attended PS 278. One of them is still there, which is one of the schools involved here. And I was at the CEC meeting last week, which was the very first that anyone had heard about this. As a school parent, I can tell you, and an involved school parent, this is a stunning surprise. I mean, if enough people find out, and we're trying to spread the word about the Youth and Education Committee, you could have hundreds of people there between the two schools.
Yeah.
So,
and that's, as I said, that's where the
and I agree with you.
Hearing is being held.
No, and I agree. That is where the crux of most of the issues will come up. The land use issues are somewhat peripheral. But I do want to give you some of the context, because I do know the answers to some of the points that you've been raising. And I also want to bring up some of the things that you haven't been raising. So it was known that the buildings had a lease. It was not known that the city had failed so spectacularly in their lease renewals at the same time as 4 charter schools managed to move into northern Inwood and secure space. I mean, you know, we've been dealing with Amber showing up on West 215th Street, and somehow the DOE schools are now getting kicked out. So in fact, there was permits filed, I think, for 400 West 219th Street, one of the sites they listed in their memo that they looked at, and the permits were filed for a 118,000 square foot, 8-story educational building. Judging by the developer, it's speculated that it's probably going to be a charter school. So there's a lot of questions regarding what the city says they did and why they're picking this site. The number one issue for the parents is that the site is a mile away and is so far away that it is outside the existing school zone, which is a huge school zone. So, you know, what SCA has not explained in their presentation to CEC, and we'll see if it comes up at Youth and Education, is any data explaining, here's the impact on the current households attending the school. Yeah. This is how many will have shorter distances. This is how many will have longer distances. This is who will be busing, and so on.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the questions I raised.
I saw that. And I think that's really the key thing is location, because I've designed and built schools for SCA. Their standards are very nice. I'm sure, although this site is as horrific as the existing one, it's no longer the car wash school, now it's the Con Ed school. I'm sure they can come up with some sort of attractive building footprint and pleasant design and so on. But there's some strange zoning things that are going on here. So one of the reasons that we objected to the rezoning as it was proposed is that it did precisely what was feared. It rezoned the existing schools it kept them not as residential, it didn't change them residential, it kept them as industrial zoning district, M15, I think. And it only allows a weird exception unless someone shows up with a 27-story hospital expansion. And this was EDC's way, I believe, of really telling Edonis, no, you cannot have a Google campus. But if we're looking at economic development, the only thing we can do realistically is expand the Allen Hospital. And so they reserved the school's site and the Columbia or the Presbyterian-owned land north of it for hospital expansion. Now there is no hospital expansion that I'm aware of. Maybe you've heard something, but I don't think there's any expansion in the wings. So I don't think that's what's driving it. And there's no really other use for the site. It's not like we have industrial customers for land in northern Inwood, but for whatever reason, the existing landlord doesn't want to renew. So the city has to find a site. The sites they gave primarily fail. They did explain why they couldn't look at the one 4650 Broadway, which we all have been through many, many meetings on. And they said that they did talk to the owner of that, but because they couldn't guarantee a timeline, and because it would be a secondary space where it had building columns jammed through it, and it's very subservient to the planned residential above, they did not consider it an acceptable site. It's also just as far as the one on 201st Street. So the problem is the other sites that they listed. And the main issue is that they've decided, for reasons they have not disclosed, that they are insisting on a co-location of 2 schools that have completely independent operations. And while there's certainly something to be said about shared amenities and economy of scale, where sure, you get a better cafeteria or a better auditorium, if you ask the parents, they'd rather have a gymateria if that meant not having to walk a mile past nightclubs, the new homeless shelter, and a bunch of car auto body shops. And by the way, past 4 charter schools and 5 other DOE schools to attend the supposed local zone school that they think they're attending. So, you know, the location is an outrage, and it's going to get fought very hard by the parents to the extent that they can. Where the land use comes into it is trying to, SCA showed up and said, well, we love your feedback, but by the way, there's no time. And we think this is the best site. If you don't offer us a solution, then your feedback is no good to us. So they're pushing for solutions. And in the rezoning, the commercial U was not rezoned. The commercial U remains capped at 2 stories retail or 8 stories about thereabouts residential, because it's, you know, R72 or with a commercial overlay. So the interest would be to try to push and help identify for SCA sites on, say, the 207th Street corridor or the Broadway corridor, where, as was mentioned, I mean, those corridors are filled with taxpayer buildings. Some of them closed because of the pandemic, because they were, you know, nightclubs or whatnot.
So just to be clear, the SCA, you know, didn't come to land use per se asking for any type of, you know, land use of discretionary action and saying there's insufficient time. They came to the general meeting to do a very summary presentation and ask for a resolution. And Liz Ritter accurately said that the work of the board is done through committees. So what they need to do in order to get to the board is to present to the appropriate committee, and that committee would draft a resolution and present it, you know, to the board. And looking at the timing, this letter is dated February 12th, but it was received February 22nd. But notwithstanding, you know, we still are within our 30 and 45 day, you know, timeframes to give them comments. And, you know, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, when I say they're asking for feedback, I'm saying the words they said to the CEC meeting. I'm sorry, I should have qualified that. I know they're not asking you for that. So I'm just telling you what they said at the CEC meeting. Mm-hmm. So, and yes, there's really no actionable item here. There's not a lot to act on from a land use perspective. Things are as of right. And, you know, location of the school vis-a-vis inconvenience for parents and so on is really more of a youth and education topic of debate, not land use. But, you know, for what it's worth, I just wanted you to hear, because you probably haven't heard it, there is a tremendous amount of anger in the parent community over the way this has been handled, the way it's coming up. And, you know, we're not talking about something niche or theoretical that sometimes comes before the committee. We're talking about something real that's going to affect thousands of families over a few years. Yeah, well, over actually, a few years, and it's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
You know, the chair of Youth and Education, Faye Florimon, and I had a half-hour conversation yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, because we were trading emails back and forth, because she was asking, you know, actually initially we were trying to have them come to land use and to youth and education, and they couldn't do that. They asked whether we could do a joint meeting, and it was a little, you know, late to do that considering that we already scheduled independent meetings, but Faye asked if land use could, you know, review the materials and, you know, provide comments, and if I could attend the youth and education meeting, which I would. But, you know, she did say that there was, you know, there was a lot of backstory. And it's like, well, Faye, tell me what you're talking about. So that's why we had, you know, the conversation. And so, as I pointed out to her, there are a lot of things that she's talking about that they are really not, you know, land use issues. No, they are legitimate issues, and they should make sure that they're covered, you know, when they speak to, you know, SCA. And it seems that there might even be, I won't say that, you know, that there is conflict, but the information that's being provided by SCA and the information that's being provided by DOE may not be exactly the same. So they need to straighten, you know, that out. Even the point that I just made, and I saw, you know, Steve made a face, the idea that, you know, if it's a leased space, you're not eligible for capital. I worked for, you know, DGS, which is now DCAS, in the early 1980s. And all we did was, you know, 10 and 20 year leases.
Yeah, no, I know, Wayne.
With, you know, city money. So I don't understand
I've built DCAS spaces myself. I understand.
Yeah, so I don't understand that at all.
Look, the school did have trouble ever getting improvements made. They never were able to get a playground. The yard was the worst yards to playgrounds you ever saw. But so there's always been issues that deal with the fact it's leased space, but that's not in question. No one's questioning that, you know, If they need to find a permanent home, that's fine. What I'm just telling you as a community member is that the ask that I'm hearing from my fellow parents is that they stop trying to collate the two schools, find two sites, because there are vastly more available sites if you don't try to co-locate them. And stop rushing this. You can find a solution that is within the school zone. So please find a location within the zone for each school that is more correlated with the data of where the kids are coming from, and don't leave Inwood north of 207th Street with a single DOE school and no middle schools.
Well, so when you say within the zone, Community School District 6, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the school zone. This is a zone school.
So what is the geographic boundaries of the school zone?
I'd have to put up on a map, but it does extend to Dykeman Street, but not this far east. I don't know what street it stops on. And let's just say the heart of the zone is centered on 207th and Broadway would be the sort of geographic center of the zone.
Does that zone school serve students who live in Dykeman houses?
Well, I don't know because SCA hasn't provided the data, but the way the school admissions work is that if you live in the zone, you have preference. And this school has a waiting list for its kindergarten. I think it has a waiting list for its middle school. And the way it works is that preference is given to the zone first. That lottery is held, those seats are filled, and only after the zone is filled does it go to the rest of District 6. So there's undoubtedly students here from all over. There's quite a few from the Bronx, actually, because parents tend to start their kids in this school. 278 in particular is a pretty high performing school for District 6, relatively speaking. And then if they move to the Bronx, they keep the kids in District 6, which they keep the kids in the school, which is why I work to reverse the streets and improve traffic flows, a lot of vehicular traffic with the school. So in any case,
wouldn't people at Dykeman houses be zoned for PS5?
Yes, that is correct. Dykeman House is zoned for PS5. So the impact is on PS5 for proximity. It's also on PS98, which becomes the only school for a community of 8,000 people who live north of 207th Street. So 98 is affected. It will probably double or triple the applications to Muskota. So it's an impact on Muskota, and it will probably also increase applications to Amistad, just for the fact that if you're looking for schools comparable to 278 and 18, Amistad is a dual language program like 18, 278 Muskota tend to have higher test scores. So it's impacting something like 6 schools. It's important they get the location right. The first impression without any, and again, I could be wrong, but they haven't presented any data. And so the feeling is that the location is not right. And they should take a harder look at the commercial use, especially where land values would be expected to not have increased with the rezoning, since the rezoning has made everything else impossible to get, thanks EDC. And therefore, that's the request. Please find two separate sites within the zone. And if there's time pressure, it might help if land use clarifies to the other committees that it's not like there's a condo waiting to take over the existing school, right? The only possible users of the existing school are industrial, hospital expansion, or I guess a charter school, but no charter school is going to be able to get a charter through SUNY or any of the other grantors if it means putting 2 DOE schools on the street. So, if you have to get a year or 2 extension, I mean, I've worked in real estate 20 years, they can get a year or 2 extension.
Are you satisfied that they definitely have to move, that the current landlord will not renew the lease?
Yes, look, the rezoning, this is a direct impact of the rezoning. The future of the school was sealed the moment the rezoning passed. So they definitely have to find a permanent home. It's unfortunate they didn't take over Northeastern Academy. That would have been really fantastic.
Yeah.
That was lost. It's unfortunate they didn't take over Good Shepherd's High School. That was lost. It's unfortunate they didn't take over St. Jude. That opportunity was lost. So now they've kind of painted themselves into a corner, and they're saying there's no sites left. And the rezoning, priced A1 Auto to 20 million, which has now been filed for an 8-story school building, apparently. But the SCA says they won't build vertically.
Yeah, but does SCA have a track record at all of doing, renovation and adaptive reuse?
None of these would be adaptive reuse. All of these would be rebuilt.
My point is, you're mentioning, there are.
Oh yeah, sure they do. Sure they
Yeah.
do. There's plenty of school buildings that the old Catholic schools and so have done have been
right. In its early years, SCA just seemed to be really reluctant to do anything with renovation. I mean, the old PS 109 in East Harlem, which actually I attended, it's like, well, it's a school. You say you need a school, why don't you renovate it? It was vacated, so you wouldn't have to deal with occupied. They just wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, and no one knows the full details, but you're going to see a big push at the committees, at the committee board level, by the parents to say that what SCA is proposing in the middle of the night, in the middle of middle school applications, no less. And look, I'm not personally involved because my youngest will have graduated by the time the school moves. But I'm pretty familiar. I've been at the school, 12 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty familiar with the setup here. And I think what I was trying to say was that I don't think, there's a lot of, the landlord won't renew, and that's fine for long term. It would surprise me if they couldn't get 1 or 2 years out of it to find a better solution. And I think they're trying to find an expedient solution that is going to jam 3 schools into southeastern Inwood in an area that the site they picked was, as you remember, Wayne, from one of the only renderings ever released to the rezoning. It was the rendering showing the little park in front and showing the 17-story apartment building. That's where they're putting the school, on that 17-story apartment building. So it's not even really consistent with the vision of what rezoning is supposed to be doing. And it just is not a good solution. And there's going to be a strong pushback against it to the extent that anything can be done. Thank you for letting me go on about it at length. I appreciate it.
What if the base of the MAD building on the north side of 207th Street, what if that were used as a school?
Sure, but I have no idea if they've designed for that or if there's community facility in there. I mean, schools are not easy creatures. I struggle to put them in buildings myself.
Building, Steve?
What?
Are you talking about the apartment building?
Yes.
Yes.
About the apartment
building. But
when they came before us, they didn't really seem to have a clear idea what they were going to do with that space.
If and I think Tom was going there, Tom rather, if you are designed purpose-built for a school at the lower level, or the lower levels plural, because it's not clear if the footprint is big enough to be on one level, you want to make sure you don't have the column spacing of your apartments driving your classroom layout. So it's not just, can we use the ground floor? And I don't think there's enough ground floor to do it, but you would want to have a purpose-built,
gymnasiums especially. The current schools share a gymnasium that's a converted loading dock. It has a column in the middle of the basketball court. It's quite hilarious if it wasn't sad.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so you don't want to do that with new construction. It wouldn't.
No, they would like to no longer have a column in their basketball court. If that could be helped.
Yeah. Does that interfere with 3-point shots? I mean, I wonder.
It's outside the 3-point circle. It's around half court. It has pads all around it. It's it's a New York City school. You take what you can get, right? And the school it's a horrible location currently, but we planted trees and flower boxes and have made the best of it. Got garbage cans added, street reversed, and so on. I don't think there's a problem with it moving. The problem is the extreme geography of where they're proposing to move it to.
Right. So what I will do, because I haven't shared this in writing with the committee, I will type up the questions that I wrote prior to the meeting, and then the ones that have come up in the course of the meeting to get your review and comment on that before I send them to Faye. But I just want to, urge everyone to please, when I send it, make sure you comment, because her meeting is Monday. And sometimes, even if I say, get it to me by X date, I get the comments like 2 or 3 days later. And we don't have time for that. She's specifically asking for our input, so let's make sure we give it to her. And the extent to which the land use members are available next Monday at 7 o'clock to join the Youth and Education. Not that we have to reiterate everything that we said here. She does have in the agenda a spot for comments from land use. So right now she only has me, but the extent to which other committee members want to chime in on things that we're talking about, I'm sure she would appreciate
it. Dave?
Yes.
How well utilized is the hospital parking lot on the east side of Broadway?
Heavily used.
Oh yeah, okay.
They park employees there for the 168th Street campus and shuttle them down.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll find out shortly if the Allen Pavilion is planning expansion, and that's what's going on behind the scenes. But and you know, look, again, there's no question that a permanent solution needs to be found. But these are two established schools, and the end result of this kind of geography is more akin to closing two schools and opening two new ones rather than relocating two schools. It's just, I suspect, and I could be wrong, but SCA and DOE have not presented the data. I suspect that the geographic disruption is very high for a very large number of families, which will fundamentally change who's served by this local school.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as I said, I will.
Thank you.
I will summarize this and share it with the committee, and the committee will get back to me, and then I will forward it to our youth and education chair. Is there any old business?
Have we made any progress in trying to get the developers of the Coliseum site and the other one at what is it? Was it Broadway and Nagel to come to the committee?
We have not, and the person who was in charge of that is now no longer on the committee or no longer on the board. Although we're not giving him a pass, we're going to still, you know, twist Chris's arm and ask him to get us that contact information. I don't think you were not on the meeting yet, so Chris Ventura resigned from the board.
Oh yeah, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, but you know, Chris is the one that every time we raise one of those developers, yeah, he said, yeah, I know them. So you know, I'm just going to still see if we could get the information from him.
Okay, I was also hoping that he would give us a progress report on the what is it called, the radio tower project on Amsterdam.
The radio tower project?
Yeah, what do they call that project between 180th and 181st Street? Isn't it something like the radio tower?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's not on the community board anymore. That doesn't mean he's not around. He's probably just too busy between work and, you know, the kid. But that doesn't mean, you know, if we want him, or I mean, the development team, Young Woo, to give us an update, you know, that can't be done. Is there any new business? It's 9:09. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I see Vivian. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
So it's Vivian, second by Rosie. We are adjourned. It's 9:10.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.